Hi guys, it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing another recent reads, and all of the books that I'm going to be talking about are new releases for this year. Right before I filmed this video, I realized that all the books I'm going to be talking about are actually books that I had listed on my most anticipated reads for this year. So that's exciting for me, probably not for anybody else, but that's fine. But I actually enjoyed a majority of all the books that I read that I'm going to be talking about today. So 2 of the books I rated a 5 stars, majority of them fell under 3 stars, and only 1 of them I rated a 2 stars, which I'm really disappointed by, but that's fine. So I will just start off with my lowest rated, work my way up to my highest rated. So we will go ahead and get started. So the first one that I'm going to start off with is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. This is an adult horror novel. I did a buddy read for this one with my friend Alicia, who just started her own channel, so I will have that one linked down in my description box. But this one follows 2 siblings by the name of Louise and Mark. And at the beginning of this story, we learn that their parents have died in a tragic accident. And so Mark currently lives in Charleston where their parents live, but Louise has to travel back to Charleston in order to get all of their family affairs in order. So planning the funeral, going over the will, getting the house together. So she has to travel back to Charleston to get all that done. And so during that process, we get some background into their parents, and we learn that their mother was really into puppets and dolls, and that's kind of creepy within itself because I don't like dolls and puppets and that kind of stuff. So that's already creepy to me. But we learned that that's what she's into. And so when we get descriptions of the house, we learn also that inside of that house, there are dolls and puppets all over the place. Their mother has this workroom specifically for putting these puppets together, but then she has displays of dolls and puppets everywhere. So while they're trying to get this house together, because Mark and Louise throughout this story argue all of the time. And so anytime they have to make a decision about something, they are arguing. So they are even arguing about whether or not they want to sell their parents' house. But while they're trying to figure all of this out, there are some creepy things going on in this house, and they are trying to figure out what the heck is happening in this house. And the person that is trying to help them sell the house, which I believe was their cousin, told them that they need to figure out what is happening in this house before they would help them sell it. So the purpose of this story is for Louise and Mark to figure out what is taking place in this house before they can actually sell it. I ended up rating this one a 2 stars. I was very disappointed by this one. I waited so long for this book to come out. It was supposed to come out back in 2022. I was devastated when it got pushed back to this year. So needless to say, I was really anticipating this book. I was highly disappointed when I did not enjoy this when I got to it. Starting with the positives, I really enjoyed the different topics that were brought up in here. So it really talks about grief and how people choose to deal with grief or not deal with grief, how people have a hard time of letting things go. It talks about a lot of secrets that take place within families and how those secrets span different generations. It talks about how things are handled once people die within families, and the situations once the parents die, and then you have people bickering over the wills and money and property and things like that. There's also a little bit of conversation around whether or not it's appropriate to tell children the truth about death when it's the right time to have those conversations with children. I also did think that the incorporation of the dolls and the puppets was really creepy. So like I said before, I already thought that stuff was creepy. So the fact that it was in here and some of the scenes in here involving the puppets was creepy. So I really did like that. What really threw me off with this book, number 1, was the 2 main characters, Louise and Mark. In the beginning, I could kind of understand their bickering because they're brother and sister. They're two totally different people. We have Mark, who was like this guy that kind of like gets away with everything. He can barely, hold a job. It's kind of like he was the favorite of the family. His parents let him get away with everything, where you have Louise, who was like the overachiever. She did what she was supposed to do. She has all of these degrees, yet she didn't feel like she got the attention that she wanted from her family. So, they were always arguing, but at a certain point in this book, it just became annoying because I said it before, they argued about everything. Every conversation that they had in this book, it turned into an argument to the point that I just had to roll my eyes every time they had a conversation because it just turned into an argument and it was annoying. By the end of this story, I did not care for either one of those characters. I did not like either one of them. They annoyed me to no end. I could not stand either one of them. In the beginning, I did think like the scenes with like the puppets and the dolls and that kind of thing was kind of creepy, but by the end of it, I just thought it just got over the top and kind of like ridiculous. I think though that that's kind of like Grady Hendrix's style with his horror. I've read a lot of his books at this point, so I think that was maybe the point. For me, it was too much. It was too over the top, and I think also by the end of it, I was just ready for it to be over, so I was kind of like checked out by that point, but it was too much for me, and it was no longer creepy, and that's kind of what I want from a horror novel, and I was kind of over it. So I also think that this book dragged on for longer than it needed to be. This book is a little over 400 pages, and I don't think it needed to be that long. There were points in here where I thought that it could have just wrapped up, but nope, it kept on going, and every time that I thought that it needed to wrap up, it just kept on going. Some of these backstories that we got were a little long-winded, and I don't think we needed that much information. It was very long. I also think that Grady Hendrix tried to throw in a lot of stuff. Like I said, he was talking about grief and all of that other stuff that I mentioned before, but he also, there was a section here where we went into like Mark's past, and he was talking a little bit about politics, and then there was a point where they were trying to talk about some mental illness, and it was doing a lot, and I don't think it needed to do all of that, and it was just doing too much. And then that's where we got those extra pages that we didn't need. It was doing too much, and this was just not what I thought that this was gonna be. So I had to land at 2 stars for this. I think that some people really enjoyed this one. I really wish that I was one of those people, but unfortunately, I was not. So 2 stars is unfortunately where I had to land. So then the next one that we have is Maame by Jessica George. This is an adult contemporary fiction novel. So in this one, we are following this young woman by the name of Maddie. I believe she's like in her early to mid 20s, but she is from Ghana, but she lives in London. And so in this one, we are following Maddie, and she is kind of like at a crossroads in her life. So she's this young woman. She actually lives at home still. She is taking care of her sick father who has Parkinson's disease. And her mother is this terrible woman who, instead of helping Maddie take care of her father like she should, she runs off to Ghana every chance that she gets to do God knows what there. And then Maddie's older brother, I believe he's only like a couple of years older than Maddie, is off working with this rap group, I think, traveling the world. So everything just kind of falls on Maddie's shoulders, where she's working, she is taking care of her father, she sends money to everybody else when they need it, and she's not really living the life that a 20-year-old should be living. So at the beginning of this story, tragedy kind of strikes, and this is the chance for Maddie to finally be out on her own, live the life that she is supposed to experience. and do all of the things that she has never done before, like experience a new job, date, go out and have fun, meet new friends, those type of things. So this is your basic, I would say, coming of age story. I rated this one a 3 stars. I did enjoy this one, not as much as I wanted to. I think my only problem with this one is that I didn't connect with Maddie as much as I wanted to, but I really did like the things that this one talks about, because it really goes into depth about how people deal with their grief, how people deal with depression, and then the denial that they have about being in depression before they actually get the help that they need. It also talks about the importance of therapy and how people are still so reluctant to go out and seek therapy. Like in this situation, Maddie's mother, she was one of those mothers where you're supposed to keep your business in the house. You're not supposed to go out and tell your business to other people. And I'm not sure if other people have heard of that or are familiar with like people saying that. I have definitely heard of that, where, you know, you're supposed to keep your business inside of this house. Don't go outside of this house and tell other people our business. That's kind of how Maddie was raised. And so it definitely goes into that, and that is something I can relate to. And I also liked how this kind of just touched on how parents make mistakes. Even though they're doing things that they think will help their children in the long run, they don't always get it right. As much as I did not like her mother was a not kind woman, and I felt so bad for Maddie at certain points, because her mother just put so much on Maddie's shoulders. I think Maddie's mother thought that she, at times, was doing what she thought was best for Maddie. Sometimes. But I do think that this book, in some way, was just trying to tell us that parents do make mistakes, but they do have their children's best interest at heart. But like I said, I did give this one a 3 stars. I just wish that I would have connected with the main character of Maddie more. And at times, I did find her just a tad bit annoying, even though I really felt for her. She does this thing in this book where she like Googles everything. And I think that's because she's just so sheltered, and she's just so used to just going to work, or she just went to school, and so she just didn't know any better. So anytime she had a question about something, she Googled everything. So literally every time she had a question, how do I do this? If I need this, what about, am I supposed to kiss him? Am I supposed to do this? Am I supposed to do that? She like Googled everything. It got annoying. And at a certain point, I was just tired of the Googling. So that was a little annoying for me. And it might not be annoying for anybody else, but it was a little annoying for me. But overall, I did enjoy this. I would recommend this one. It did remind me of another book that I really enjoyed called Queenie, that I did give a 5 stars to. So if you enjoyed Queenie, I would definitely recommend this one. Even though I gave it a 3 stars, I still enjoyed it. So yeah, I would still recommend this. So then the next one that I have is The Bandit Queens by Perini Schroff, and this one is a adult mystery. So in this one, we are following our main character by the name of Gita. We learn in the beginning of this one that her husband has been missing for 5 years, and she doesn't know what happened to her husband. Literally, he just one day went missing, and she doesn't know what happened. So she became a widow. But rumors have spread in her Indian village that she must have killed him. And they are like wild rumors of how she must have killed him. So people are basically kind of like afraid of her because they think that she killed him, and kind of distance themselves from her and kind of like say rude remarks to her, like when they pass her. And she has this jewelry making business that's actually doing pretty well. Because they think that she killed her husband, they're afraid not to buy her jewelry. So, I mean, it's kind of working out in her benefit. but she's a part of this lone group. And the women in her lone group also think that she must have killed her husband or disposed of him in some way. And so one of the women in this lone group actually approaches her. We find out that this woman has been abused by her husband, and she wants Gita to help her get rid of her husband as well. So Gita is wrapped up in this scheme to try to help this lady get rid of her husband, knowing good and dang on well that she never really killed her other husband. So this story is just about Gita getting wrapped up in these schemes to help one woman turns into another woman, help these women get rid of their husbands. And you eventually learn like the backstories of these women and why they want to get rid of their husbands and the true nature of what happened to Gita's husband. So I rated this one a 3 stars. I really liked some of the messages that were being said into this one. It really talked about the power of friendship and women banding together to help one another. I really liked how it focused on like women being able to take their power back, especially if they're being abused by men. I will say this has a content warning for domestic violence. There is some abuse against animals, so if you are sensitive to any of that, I would be cautious going into that. But I also like that this talked a lot about the Indian culture, which I'm not really familiar with, so I liked that it provided a lot of that information. I liked how you will soon learn what this cover meant, what the Bandit Queen actually means, and how that ties into the story, because the Bandit Queen is actually a real person and it is mentioned quite a few times throughout this story and how that is relevant to the story. So I liked how it was incorporated. I like just how fun this story is and like the banter back and forth between the women. As soon as the story started, I think I was probably maybe 2 or 3 chapters in. This really started to remind me of Finlay Donovan Was Killing It. I think if you were a fan of that book or that series, I think that you would probably really enjoy this one. Now, with that being said, even though I really enjoyed like the friendships and like the banter amongst the women, especially like when they started to get like Gita's involvement with their like schemes and plots, I did think that their conversations and the words and like the phrases, it made them sound like the women were a lot younger than they were supposed to be, and it made them sound kind of immature. I think these women were supposed to be like in their late 30s maybe, but if you didn't know that, I would think that they were a lot younger than what they were supposed to be. So even though I liked their banter, it just, at times, I forgot that these were supposed to be like grown women with children. They just sounded like maybe teenagers. I also thought at times the pacing was a little bit off. Even though I was having like a really good time with the story, there were a few slow moments in here where I was kind of, drifting in and out of the story. But overall, I still enjoyed it. I would recommend it. And like I said, I gave this one a 3 stars. So the next one that I want to talk about, I actually read it on my Kindle, and that is Untethered Sky by Miss Fauna Lee. It is a novella. It is an adult fantasy. It actually is not out yet. It releases on April 11th, but I was able to get an art copy from NetGalley. So this one follows our main character by the name of Esther, and she is what is known as a ruck rider, I believe. And at the beginning of this, she is an apprentice, and she is paired with this fledgling that is called Zara, and we watch them as they are being trained together. So Esther and Zara are being trained, and the purpose of these ruck riders is they go out and they chase these great beasts that are called manticores, and they are really dangerous. They kill everything. They're really hard to kill. But once fledglings grow up, they are considered a ruck. So like I said, they're being trained together. We are watching this happen, and we learn through like these flashback sequences that when Esther was younger, her mother and her brother were actually killed by Manticore. And that is what is actually driving Esther to become a Ruck Rider. And so eventually, after the training is over, she is an official Ruck Rider. Zara is off to go ahead and start hunting a Manticore. And Esther joins this group that is called the King's Royal Muse, where they go out and they're trying to hunt as many Manticores as possible. And the story is basically about Esther and Zara and a group of other Ruck Riders out in their village, I believe, and they're just trying to keep everyone safe by hunting these Manticores that literally go out and try to kill and eat as many people as they can. So this story is really short, and even though it's really short, I think it's like 160 something pages, it really feels like a complete story, which is something that I really like when I read novellas, because sometimes those are hit or miss where you end it and you're like, I really wish that I could have got more. I think I got exactly what I needed from that. I got a complete story. I really liked the relationship between Esther and her Ruck, Zara. It was beautiful. I really liked the flashback sequences between Esther and learning what happened in her childhood and learning exactly what drives her and why she wants to do this so bad, because not many women are trying to be a Ruck Rider. Are trying to be a Ruck Rider, and not too many people survive their apprenticeship, and not too many people want to do this. And part of the story was them trying to figure out a way to encourage more people to join, to become apprentices. And so it was really nice to see what is driving Esther to do this. And a big part of that is vengeance for her family. I do think that there were a lot of tense moments in here, especially when you got to see some of like the fight scenes with the Manticores. Some of these were like on the edge of your seat for me, which I really enjoyed. I think Fonda Lee has a way of just writing those scenes, which I really enjoy. But I did end up giving this one a 3 stars. I really enjoyed Fonda Lee's Greenbone Saga series, which I know is really different from this short story. I did not go into this one thinking that I was going to get the Greenbone Saga. I knew that I was getting something totally different, and that's fine. Even though I enjoyed it and I gave it 3 stars, this one I think will work for people more who really like those animal companion type stories. Me, they're okay. That's not something that I like necessarily gravitate towards. I'm gonna pick up anything that Fonda Lee writes at this point, so that's why I was anticipating this. I enjoyed it. Yes, I thought it was a fun time. I thought it was a complete story. I enjoyed it, but it's nothing that I thought was great. That's the only thing I can say. I thought it was really good, but that's about it. I think if I was just somebody who was just really into like that animal companion thing, I think this really would have nailed it for me. But I think if you are somebody who likes that in your stories, I think you would love this. But otherwise, for me, it was a solid 3 stars. So jumping into my first 5-star read, it's actually a nonfiction. So yay for me, because one of my goals for this year was to read more nonfiction. This is my 3rd nonfiction of the year. Now, granted, one of my nonfictions I did DNF of this year, and if you know, you know. But this one is Drama Free, A Guide to Managing Unhealthy Family Relationships by Nedra Glover Tawwab. So this one is about just if you feel like your family is unhealthy, I guess. That's the easiest way to say it. And for whatever reason, I just felt like this was speaking to me. I was at the bookstore and I already knew, like I said, these were all on my most anticipated reads. When I read the synopsis for this one, it sounded like something that I kind of needed. And when I went to Barnes and Nobles and I skimmed through the introduction, I was like, this is definitely what I need. And I think everybody would benefit from this. Nobody's family is perfect by any means. And I think that you would take away something from this, and it just talks about how to just deal with certain situations within your family. I tabbed, underlined, highlighted a lot of stuff in here, and some stuff I have already referenced, not even gonna lie. But I like the setup of this book because with each chapter, it starts off with a scenario. And she stated that these are scenarios that she's actually dealt with her patients, because she is a licensed therapist, but she just changed the names. But it gives you a scenario, and then she gives you all of these steps of things that she's worked through with these particular patients. And then at the end of that, she gives you these exercises and questions that you can answer if you want to. And I really liked that because you can reflect back on these situations if they apply to you. And they don't necessarily have to deal with your family. They could be with friendships. But I really think that you would benefit from reading this or skimming through this, because even things that I think, oh, that wouldn't apply to me, just reading it, I was like, yeah, that applies to me. And I just think that this was just so eye-opening. It just talks about how to fix relationships between your in-laws or your siblings or, your parents, or, how to have those tough conversations. It just talks about how to set boundaries with people in your family or certain people in your family. And it talks about setting boundaries with your parents or your siblings, or your uncles or your cousins. And then it actually gives you examples of what those conversations would look like, or examples of things you could say to certain people when you're trying to set those boundaries. It also talks about if you have examples of people who have gambling problems or any other sort of addictions in your family, and how you would go about fixing those type of relationships. So if you have any sort of issue within your family, there's probably an example of it in here somewhere. Even if it's a small part, it's probably in here. Or if you don't even think that you have a problem, I bet you if you read this book, you would then see a problem that you didn't even know that you had. So I really enjoyed this. It was really eye-opening. It really made me reflect about some things that were taking place in my own family. And then there were some things that I have not experienced yet, like in-laws. I'm not married, so I don't have those kind of issues yet, but I will keep this around for if that happens in the future, and I need to reflect on that if I do have any of those problems. So I highly recommend this one. I plan to check out her other book that she has, because I'm pretty sure that would help me with whatever I got going on, because I did not know I had stuff going on. So 5 stars. I really enjoyed this. So then the last book that I want to talk about, and also another 5-star, is Lost in the Moment and Found by Shannon McGuire. And this is the 8th book in the Wayward Children series. And this is an adult portal fantasy. And so before I get into it, I'm just going to say that there is a content warning for grooming and gaslighting. And I'm saying that now because at the very beginning of this, I listened to this on audio. It was stated that was a content warning. So I just want to say that before I even give you a synopsis over this. So this one follows our main character by the name of Ancy. And I want to say she's really young at the start of this one. She has to be maybe 5, 6, I think. And at the beginning of the story, she loses her father. And her mother ends up getting into a new relationship. and that relationship has a effect on Ansi. And the man that her mother gets with is not so nice to Ansi, and there's a bit of gaslighting and grooming that takes place. And Ansi, just like with the other books in this series, she ends up finding a door that takes her to another world. And in that world, it's really unique because things that are lost end up in this particular world. And then there are like other doors within that world that Ansi can travel to, but they're the reason why she can then travel to other worlds within that world that she went to. So I'm going to leave it at that. I really enjoyed this one. Even though I really enjoyed this one, I was really sad for Ansi the entire time. When we were learning about Ansi and when she was at home with her mother, I was devastated for her. I listened to this one, like I said. I hated listening to what she was going through with this man at her house. And then I was so excited when she finally got transported to her worlds, because that's one of my favorite things about the series is when these kids are going to these other worlds, but then once you find out what world you went to and what happened there, I just was angry all over again. Poor Ansi. She just could not catch a break. I felt for this girl. I felt for her. I did not think that Shauna McGuire could get like an emotion out of me like she did. And I'm not a crier. I didn't cry. But I'm not a crier when I read books. I have yet to find a book that will make me cry. But this one definitely got some emotion out of me. So I immediately gave this one a 5 stars. I think I was already thinking 5 stars like in chapter 2. I was like, yep, this one's getting a 5-star out of me. I don't think it could go wrong from here. I think that Shauna McGuire handled the topic perfectly. She gave you enough without giving you too much. She gave you what she needed to give you without having to explain too much. If you get it, you get it. And she did what she had to do in this one. I really enjoyed this one. I don't really have much else to say because, like I said, I don't want to spoil anything. And I think if you have not read the series, at least read this one. Maybe reading this one would encourage you to then go back to read some other of the books, because this one, you could read it by itself. It's not going to spoil anything, but this one definitely pulled on my heartstrings. Definitely my favorite one. The only one that I have given 5 stars to. I really enjoyed this one. Definitely deserving of a 5 stars. We are ending this video on a high note. Highly recommend this one. So that is all that I have for you guys, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.